In life, anything is possible. Because we can never fully understand how the world works, and the laws of physics prevent us from being able to tell the future, everything we predict is a probability. Some are a lot more probable, others are less probable, while some have astronomically low chances of ever happening. The probability is vanishingly small, but it remains non-zero. Would you get hit by a car? Will you get struck by lightning? Will we ever achieve world peace? If there is a chance that anything can happen, what are the odds? I was scrolling through the deepest parts of the internet one day when I came across this man, Roy Cleveland Sullivan, the man who has been hit by lightning 7 times in his lifetime. The odds of getting struck by lightning once isn't that low, it's just about 1 in 15,000. Even if you live in a small town, chances are that somebody in that town has been struck by lightning at least once. The odds of being struck 7 times in a period of 80 years? That's a 1 in 10 to the 28 chance. This seems like such incredible and unfortunate odds, until you consider the fact that you're more likely to get struck by lightning 7 times than you are to shuffle a deck of cards into perfect numerical order. Those odds? 1 in 10 to the 68. Probability is something that we can't really comprehend as humans. If we did, we'd stop worrying about a lot of things and stop taking granted for most of the things we should be worried about. Like sharks. No thanks to the movie Jaws, humans now have an immense fear of sharks. But the reality is, you're more likely to get killed by a vending machine than you are to get killed by a shark. The odds of getting killed by a vending machine are 1 in 112 million, while the odds of getting killed by a shark are a staggering 1 in 250 million. Now, the odds that you'll be attacked by a shark are much lower, at 1 in 3.7 million, but even that is still too high for the monsters we've branded sharks to be. For context, you're more likely to get killed by a dog, at a 1 in 112,400 chance, than you are to get killed by a shark, but we still keep them in our homes as loving pets. You're more likely to get killed by hornets, wasps, or bees at 1 in 63,225 than you are to get killed by a shark. In fact, you're more likely going to get killed by the government for committing murder at 1 in 119,000 than you are of getting killed by a shark. When you put a little thought into it, you realize that most of the time, our fears are sensational and not rational. When something tragic happens and it garners a lot of public attention, we are more likely to be afraid of that thing, even if it is much less common than the less notorious things. The most prominent example of this is the way we treat plane crashes. Now yes, when planes do crash, it is tragic. But because they cause such a big spectacle and have lots of media coverage, we forget that it is still by far the safest way to travel. Passenger airplane incidents are very rare, and your odds of dying in a plane crash are very slim at 1 in 205,000. That's incredibly low when you compare it to your odds of dying in a car accident, which is just 1 in 107. For motorcycle riders, it's 1 in 890, and even pedestrians aren't safe at 1 in 541. But wait, maybe the reason the airplane deaths are so low has to do something with our fear. Before people go on an airplane, they usually prepare well in advance. No harmful objects are allowed on board, and there's always usually more than one designated pilot who has trained for years on safety practices before they were ever allowed to fly a plane. Compare that to road travel, where we don't really think that much about it, and you can maybe see why things are the way they are. And with the odds that you'll be involved in a drunk driving accident in your lifetime being incredibly high at 2 in 3, you can see what I mean. We barely give it any thought. Hopefully, we can all do better. Try to reduce the risk by simply designating a driver beforehand or taking an Uber when you go out for fun. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Conjurer. What are the odds that your information will be leaked in a data breach? If you didn't know, it's pretty high and it's getting worse. A report from Identity Theft Resource Center showed that there were 68% more data breaches in 2021 than there were in 2020. Unfortunately, the only way to stop this is a very tedious process. You need to email every single data broker and request that they delete the information they have about you. You then have to go through all the hoops, reply to all their objections, and fight desperately for your own privacy. Because of how valuable your data is to these companies, this process can genuinely take years, but Incogni can help you guarantee your privacy the easy way. All you have to do is create an account and grant them the right to work for you. And that's it. Incogni will reach out to data brokers on your behalf to request all your personal data be deleted and deal with any objection from the data brokers. It's literally that easy. To get started, sign up using the link in the description. The first 100 people to use code APERTURE with the link below get 20% off of Incogni. It's completely risk-free for 30 days, so I encourage every one of you to at least give it a try, and if you're not happy, you get a full refund anyway. But I can assure you, when you see just how many data brokers have your information, you'll definitely want to keep your subscription. Back to our story. Another thing we should be worried about is right-handed appliances. Yes, it's true that most of the world is right-handed, for some reason. But if we're learning anything as a species, it's inclusiveness. We must do the same with dominant hands because, as it is, the odds of a left-handed person dying simply because they used a right-handed appliance wrong is 1 in 7 million. And while the chances look ridiculously slim, it has to happen to somebody. If you don't die, hey, you'll get a lot of free money from that lawsuit. The ambidextrous people among us can help us decide what appliances are better suited for what dominant hand. And we have a surprising amount of them, 1 in 100 to be exact. Now this does not include people who have had to learn how to use their non-dominant hand because of injury or out of curiosity. It's just people who are born with an amazing control of both of their hands. Art is very subjective. What some people might find beautiful, others will find ugly. What one might consider great acting, others might see it as over the top and annoying. You see, much unlike science, art doesn't have a definitive set of rules, and so they don't have a strict guideline for judgment either. And while this allows for creativity, it also makes it very difficult to find success in the world of the arts. If you want to be a surgeon, for instance, you know that if you pass the med school exams, intern, go through residency, and so forth, you'll make it. You have a set path to follow. But if you want to be a supermodel, or a rock star, or a YouTuber, it's not that straightforward. You have to work hard at it, every single day. And even then, your odds are very slim. You can be a theater kid all your life, go to film school, practice as much as possible. But in the end, the odds that you'll become a movie star aren't very encouraging, at just 1 in 1.1 million. It's amazing, sir, that even with the odds as slim as this, every year, thousands of people will travel from all parts of the world to LA, trying to fulfill their dreams of being on the big screen. When interestingly, you have a much better chance of winning an Oscar at just 1 in 11,500 than becoming a movie star. But of course, this Oscar includes all the technical awards that are given when everyone is taking a bathroom break. And most people would much rather take a 1 in 1.1 million chance than to receive an award when no one's watching. If you're a writer, however, the odds are slightly in your favor. There is a 1 in 220 chance that you'll write a New York Times bestseller. If you put in the time and the effort necessary, these odds are definitely going to go up, bringing you that inch closer to making your dream a reality. Sports are closer related to science than arts, because most of the time, if you work at it hard enough, you'll achieve some kind of success. But how hard can you work when there's only so many medals to go around? Millions of people around the world dedicate their entire lives to competing in the Olympics, yet only 1 in 662,000 will ever win a medal. And that's the thing about scarcity. When there's such limited space, the odds of ever being able to do or acquire said thing just gets increasingly thinner. Think about the number of children who have worn a spacesuit and helmet to career day in school and told everybody that they want to be astronauts. Now think about the fact that the odds of becoming an astronaut are 1 in 12.1 million, and you get sad for those little kids whose dreams will one day have to be crushed. What if they wanted to be president? Well, the chance of becoming a US president is 1 in 10 million. Unless you're a religious 6-foot-tall Harvard Law graduate and military veteran. Then your odds go up astronomically, especially if you're a Harvard alumni, because as surprising as it might sound, the odds that the President of America has attended Harvard is 1 in 3.58. So if you want to have the best chance of becoming president, you know what school to apply for. However, getting into Harvard is almost as difficult as becoming president when you're done. With a chance of just 4.6% of getting in, you might want to apply to some backup schools as well. At the end of the day, we all just want to be successful. Whether it's through the arts, or going through the so-called traditional route of finishing college and getting a good job. We all just want to have enough money to live comfortably while we're still young. But sadly, the odds are stacked against us. There's a slim chance of just between 6.4% and 22.3% that you'll become a millionaire, with different factors like race, education, wealth status, and age helping to place you somewhere in that range. While the chance of becoming a billionaire? Well, there's 8 billion humans in the world, and only around 2,000 billionaires, so basically, non-existent. Getting old has a bittersweet taste to it. On the one hand, you're getting wiser, more mature, and you have a much better understanding of the world than you did when you were younger. But on the other hand, you're also getting weaker, you're forgetting things more. And sadly, your body just keeps breaking down, one after the other, and the stats don't really help at all. If you're under 20 right now, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you'll be disabled before you retire. And it gets worse. There's a 1 in 2 chance that at the age of 75, you'll have disabling hearing loss. This is why whenever people say they want to work hard now so they can enjoy their retirement, I kind of feel bad for them. Because most times, at that age, you don't really get to enjoy anything. All you can really do is sit around and reminisce on a life that once was, and when the Grim Reaper comes, you say goodbye to your loved ones and move on. And that's why you should do everything you want to do right now. For some reason, there's a 7% higher chance that you'll die on your birthday than on any other day, going out together with the candles. But for a few of us, living to 100 is possible, with the odds of that happening being approximately 1 in 5,780, with those odds increasing significantly if you're biologically a woman. On the other hand of the spectrum, one of the most incredible human achievements is being born. If you're here watching this video right now, you deserve a round of applause. You ran, you fought, you survived. And against all odds, you made it. The odds of you existing were 1 in 5.5 trillion. But here you are. You might have been the 1 in 20 chance of being born on your mom's exact due date, or you're like most of us who are born 2 weeks before or after. You might be the 1 in 250 who are geniuses, burdened with the weight of advancing our civilization, or like the rest of us who are cheering them on. Whoever you are, whatever it took you to get here, that was an incredible feat, one that is unrepeatable. Not in this lifetime, at least.
Perfect. Fine.
As light travels through space, it behaves like a wave, but light is also made of tiny particles called photons. This is the paradox of wave particles, and it has completely revolutionized modern physics. The universe is filled with intriguing paradoxes like this, statements that challenge our understanding of reality and force us to question our deepest assumptions. These paradoxes have the power to change our lives in profound ways, opening us up to new possibilities and reshaping the very fabric of our existence. Here are paradoxes that will change your life.
First blood. Well, the lotto jackpot has grown to over $64 million.
It all started with a lottery ticket.
If you go out and buy a lottery ticket knowing fully well that your chances of winning are 10 million to 1, it'd be logical to assume you didn't win. You'd also be justified in thinking that your friend, your uncle, his sister, your cousin, and their dog all have losing tickets. You're justified in believing that everyone who bought a ticket will lose, even when you know the lottery was fair and there has to be a winner. Somehow you're justified in believing something you know to be false. This demonstrates that truth is relative. It depends on context, prejudice, and your perspective about the world. Because the truth is, the only thing you can prove with certainty is that nothing is certain. This is why people don't consider Pinocchio saying "my nose will grow now" to be a paradox. His nose will not grow because he didn't lie. He simply made a false prediction. If we have a set of all sets that do not contain themselves, does that set contain itself? Imagine there's a barber who shaves all men who don't shave themselves, and only men who don't shave themselves. Does the barber shave himself? This is an example of Russell's paradox, a paradox that shook the mathematical world. These paradoxes playfully nudge us into realizing that self-reference can often lead to unexpected contradictions. Contradictions aside, though, we all want to be happy, but those who seek out happiness directly often don't find it. This is the paradox of hedonism. If we truly want to be happy, we need to stop searching for happiness and pursue other meaningful activities like nurturing our relationships or serving others. And only then can we be truly happy. The pursuit of pleasure in its raw form often leads to disappointment, while a life lived in service can lead to unexpected happiness. Deep down we all know this. Endless partying, decadent eating habits, and shopping sprees. We know these activities are never as fulfilling as we think they are, and more often than not, we're left with a sense of emptiness after the dust settles. It's called post-indulgence clarity. We see this paradox even in our relationships. Expecting your partner to completely control your happiness often makes them unable to make you happy. at least not in the way you want it.
Fine.
The reality is that to have good relationships, we need to be somewhat independent of them. People think that to find the right partner, they need all the options in the world to pick the perfect person, but in truth, having more options isn't always better. Just look at the fact that we have all the dating apps at our fingertips, and many of us still can't find a healthy relationship. This is the paradox of choice, and contrary to what we think, many options often leave us less satisfied with our final decision. I once watched a TikTok where this guy said men today see more beautiful women while scrolling through TikTok for 5 minutes than kings from the past did in their entire lives, and although it was a joke, he was entirely correct. But it's not a good thing. According to biological anthropologist Helen Fisher, the human brain isn't built to deal with more than 5 to 9 options for a partner. After that, the brain goes into decision paralysis, where it almost refuses to pick. So the next time you feel inundated by options, remember that less is sometimes better, and more data may not always be more informative. Learning is great. Asking questions and figuring out how things work is how our species has gotten to where it is today. But learning is also a paradox, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. It's an amazing paradox, one that encourages you to never stop learning. Paradoxes are everywhere in mathematics and statistics, like Simpson's paradox. Here, trends that appear in a different group will disappear or even reverse when the groups are combined to form a larger group. In the 1970s, UC Berkeley was accused of gender bias against women in its admissions process. At first glance, the admissions data made it seem like men were more likely to be admitted than women. But when the data was broken down into individual departments, most departments had admission percentages that were significantly in favor of women. The problem was that a higher proportion of women were applying to more competitive departments with lower admission rates, so when compared to all the men in the school, it seemed like women had lower rates of admission, but when compared to the men in each department, it was clear that the women actually had a higher rate. This is, unfortunately, how misinformation spreads. It's usually not with wrong data, but with the correct data expressed without proper context.
You're interrupting my
Because the reality is that often, as paradoxical as it may seem, the whole is different from the sum of its parts. Change is ever present in our lives. The human body replaces billions of cells daily, and every 7 years or so, you are an entirely different cellular collection. So if we're constantly changing, how do we know the person we are today is the same person we were 7 years ago? One might say the essence of who we are remains, but that essence is really just the result of our thoughts, beliefs, and experiences, which are also changing. So who really are you?
I can hardly wait.
Maybe you like defining yourself based on your struggles, how hard you pursue something you want to achieve. But have you ever thought that sometimes trying too hard to get something almost makes it impossible to get? It's the backwards law, and it's an interesting concept with lots of layers to uncover. If you're interested in a dedicated video about the subject, just let me know in the comments below. In 2016, after his infamous penalties against Chile, Lionel Messi hung up his boots with his beloved Argentina. In what seemed like the last nail in the coffin, Messi simply had enough. On the club stage, success seemed to come to him so easily, but where he really wanted it, where he desperately tried to do it all by himself, victory seemed elusive. Consider the paradox of Achilles and the tortoise coined by Zeno, the father of Stoicism. In this paradox, Achilles gave a tortoise a head start and races it to infinity. Zeno argued that Achilles will never truly overtake the tortoise because when he reaches where the tortoise started, the tortoise will have moved a little further, and this pattern will continue till infinity. The paradox is silly, but it challenges our perception of movement, space, and infinity. And the realization it leaves with us, especially with Messi's story, is that sometimes no matter how much you try, some things seem just that little bit out of reach. Messi had to accept that part of his legacy was beyond his control. The Argentine Football Federation was underfinanced and poorly managed, and there was no one around him when he needed support. With criticism pouring down from all sides and embarrassing defeats one after another, the dream would remain just that, a dream. Yet, as soon as he let go, the tide began turning. Messi took almost a metaphorical backseat, dropping deeper than his traditional role, playing farther from the goal than he had ever played. His job now wasn't to shine himself, but cast lights on the others, many of whom were young kids who were fans of him when he hung up his boots in 2016. But there he was on December 18th, 2022, nearly 6 years after that missed penalty, lifting the World Cup. Very few stories are as remarkable as Messi's. Most of us live and die without doing or being anything special. Or is that so? If there's nothing oddly special about us, the earth and the life it holds, then the universe should be teeming with life, and yet, it isn't. You might say maybe that it is, and we just aren't advanced enough to search the galaxy to find it, and you'll be right. But considering how young our galaxy is compared to others out there, and that if given enough time, any advanced species should be able to figure out interstellar travel. If there are any aliens, we should have seen them by now. This is Fermi's paradox, and put simply by a New York Times article, it exclaims, "If life is so easy, someone from somewhere must have come calling by now." Maybe equally paradoxical is the insignificance of the question, are we special, when you boil it down to the individual. There's around 20 quintillion animals on Earth, that's 20 billion million, yet the value of a single life is questioned. So why do we think that the universe teeming with life will make us any less unique?
You require my assistance?
There's something innately valuable about life. What exactly it is may remain forever elusive. And speaking of elusive things in life, the coastline paradox is a geographical conundrum that originated in the mind of British scientist Lewis Fry Richardson. It's a concept that challenges our understanding of measurement and infinity, revealing a surprising contradiction that's not only mathematical but also physical. Essentially, this paradox states that the length of a coastline depends on the length of the tool used to measure it. The shorter the ruler, the longer the measured length of the coastline. This is because a smaller ruler can capture more of the intricate twists and turns of the coastline. But here the paradox arises. Theoretically, as the ruler gets infinitely small, the length of the coastline becomes infinitely large. Consider the coastline of Britain as an example. If we were to measure it with a 100-kilometer ruler, we would get a significantly shorter length than with a 1-kilometer ruler, which would capture more details of the coastline. And if we used a 1-centimeter ruler, the coastline would appear even longer. Following this logic to its extreme, the coastline seems to stretch to infinity as the ruler shrinks to zero. But how can this be? After all, Britain is an island of finite size. The paradox stems from the fractal nature of coastlines. They have a high degree of complexity and self-similarity at all scales. This is a real-world example of a mathematical concept known as fractal geometry. The coastline paradox is not only mind-bending, but it also has practical implications for cartography, geology, and various other disciplines. It teaches us a humbling lesson about the limitations of our measurements and how they can be influenced by the scale at which we look at things. It's a testament to the unexpected complexities that can emerge from something as simple as measuring a length. The coastline paradox is a stunning illustration of how reality can defy our intuitive assumptions, revealing an infinitely intricate, endlessly fascinating world of surprises. It's a poetic ode to the idea of paradoxes themselves, from being incorporated into movies to revolutionizing reality in the sciences. Paradoxes have captured our imagination. Intellectual enigmas, that's what they are. Beautiful puzzles that tease our intellect, challenge our perceptions, and invite us to look beyond the apparent. They hold up a mirror to the complexities of life and the universe, reflecting an intriguing and elusive existence. Paradoxes gracefully illustrate that our universe isn't a mere collection of absolutes, but a symphony of mysteries, wonders, and unfathomable truths.
I am the blade of the goddess. Moonlight shines upon the
For the past month or so, I've been thinking a lot about life. And when people say that, they usually mean what they want to do in life, whether that be their career, or relationships, or entertainment, or leisure. But I've been thinking differently. Of course, I've been thinking about those things, but I've also been thinking about how much of your life is really yours. How much of your life is really being lived to its full potential. Are you living, or are you just existing? On average, you're going to get about 79 years on this big rock called Earth. If you live in Monaco, it's closer to 90. If you live in Chad, you'll be lucky to get 50. Regardless, we don't get 79 years of freedom. We have responsibilities and things that we can't ignore. Most importantly, our bodies. Assuming you sleep 8 hours a night on average, about a third of your life, or 26 years, is going to be spent sleeping. So right away, we're down from 79 to 53. But it doesn't stop there. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you're going to or have gone to school. In the United States, you'll go for at least 12 years. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 36 weeks a year. This amounts to 17,280 hours spent just inside the school building. But wait, we also have to factor in homework, and out-of-school activities, among other things. So, this is more like 22,000 to 25,000 hours, or about 3 years of your life. If you go to college or university afterwards, make it 5 years instead. We're down to 48 years. Well, all this schooling and money you spent getting a degree has to be put to some use, right? Chances are you'll try and get a job in the field of whatever it is your degree is in. It'll probably be a full-time job, so you'll be working 40-hour weeks pretty regularly, if not more than that.
Require my assistance?
Let's say you get 2 weeks of vacation per year. The average person works for about 40 to 50 years of their life, so we'll just go with the average and say 45. Over your entire life, you'll work on average about 90,000 hours, or about 10 years of your life. We have 38 years left. Wait, depending on where you live, your commute to work will vary. You might drive yourself, you might walk, you might use an Uber or a taxi. Regardless, your commute to and from work, on average, takes about 1.5 hours a day. Adding this up over your entire working career, it amounts to 17,520 hours, or about 2 years of your life. 36 years left. All of this work and studying really builds up an appetite, so you should probably spend some time eating. On an average day, you spend about 70 minutes just eating food to survive. In your 79 years of life, you'll spend about 32,000 hours just eating, or about 4 years of your life. Down to 32. Well, after you're done eating, you have to clean up, and maybe do some chores around the house. On average, you spend about 1 hour a day doing tasks just around your house. Cleaning up after you eat, washing dishes, doing laundry, showering, and plenty of other stuff. This amounts to nearly 29,000 hours over the course of your life, or about 3 years. 29 years left. Eventually, all of that food and water has to leave your body somehow. You'll spend about 3 months of your life just sitting on the toilet. Yeah. Of course, we also waste time, and we do it pretty well. Over the course of our lifetimes, we'll spend about 115,000 hours on our phones, or about 13 years. This, of course, is just your phone. This doesn't include you watching TV, you playing games, among other things. 16 years left. Assuming you can afford to retire at the average age of 62, you'll spend the rest of your life living the luxuries of retirement, if you can still function properly. Over 50% of retired people over the age of 65 have some sort of disability, with 15% of those people having 3 or more. Chances are, if you are one of these people, you'll be in and out of medical care pretty often. So, those final 16 years of freedom you have, it's a coin flip. That doesn't exactly entail freedom. So overall, you have 1 year in your 79-year life to really and truly do what you want to do. But despite the age you might be, young or old, you may be nearing the end of your time with some of the most important people in your life. For example, while you're young and in school from the ages of 1 to 18, you'll most likely be spending nearly every day in the presence of your parents. After you finish your schooling, assuming your parents are in their mid-40s, we'll say they have about 30 years left in their life. The real world starts to set in. Your job, your possible relationships, your important things to do in life take priority. Eventually, if you leave your hometown, you'll only be seeing your parents around holidays and special occasions, maybe 10 days a year. So, 300 days left with the people who brought you into the world, whereas before you would see them almost every single day. You have already spent 95% of the time that you will ever spend with your parents in the first 18 years of your life. And now, you only have the remaining 5% for the rest of your life. At the end of the day, there's only one thing that matters, and that's your own happiness. What many people don't realize is that they do so many things in life just to try and succeed as opposed to fulfilling a purpose. They work a job they hate for 40 years just to make that extra $30,000 a year so they can afford a car that they only drive for work. It's temporary happiness, not genuine happiness. People go to school to become a doctor because their mom or their dad or somebody else told them to, not because they actually want to. I really hope that every single person watching this video gets insanely rich and famous so that they can finally realize that this isn't the point of life. The point is to be happy with what you're doing while you're doing it. Alright, sure, the 45 working years or however long you're working is going to be hard to get past. But what if you don't hate waking up every day to go to work? What if your work is your happiness? You see, life isn't a straight path. You can't map it out perfectly one-to-one. It just doesn't work like that. We spend every day planning on what we're going to do next, instead of just taking in the day for what it actually is. Sure, we have to eat, duh. But what if you spend that time eating with friends or family, or just people who make your life better? Your commute to work might be long and tedious sometimes, but what if you spend that time listening to podcasts, or carpooling with coworkers and friends? The 13 years we waste on our phones might seem useless, but what if you use that time to build the business you've always wanted to, or build the brand you've always wanted, or make a YouTube channel to talk to people about the random ideas you get? You'll bring so much value to people that you never even thought was possible. Let's say you take care of yourself and regularly work out and eat decently well. Your chances of being healthy later in life is much more likely, and you'll have much more free time to master the things that you really want, whether that be a skill or just relationships with others. No matter what you or I or any person on this planet does, time doesn't stop for anyone.
Hello.
Time is the one thing you cannot get back. If you lose a lot of money, it's fine. You can get more. If your friend decides to turn their back on you, it's fine. There's millions of people out there in the same situation. But time, you can't get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. How many days have you spent doing the same mundane tasks that you hate? And more importantly, when is it going to end? Life is about choices. Every choice you've ever made has led you to this exact moment watching this video. And given that you only have one life, at least in this universe, why not make your own decisions? So many people live life predicated on somebody else's opinion, which is dumb. People have so many barriers in life, but they aren't really about money, they aren't about time, they aren't about how you look, it's about opinions. Other people's opinions. Probably about 90% of people are unhappy because they value someone else's opinion more than their own. When you're old and unable to do the things that you could have when you're younger, you'll regret. And regret hurts more than any breakup, failure, or anything else ever could. Life doesn't have to suck, you don't have to regret everything.
Welcome to
That FOMO, or fear of missing out, is a poison. Instead of living trying to mimic people you see on Instagram or YouTube or social media, just live based on your own terms. Instead of just observing and living passively, really start to think about what you do with your time. Does that mean call your boss and tell him you quit? No. Does that mean drop out of school tomorrow? No. All it means is to truly decide what you want in life and put yourself in the right direction. It's not gonna happen overnight, that's not the point. There would be no journey then. As cliche as it sounds, your 7-9-year journey here is very short. Sure, it's technically the longest thing you'll ever do, but the universe is 13.8 billion years old. If the universe's history was condensed down into 24 hours, the world as we know it, with cars and airplanes and civilization as we know it, would only come into existence in the very last second. Block out any and all negativity in your life. And once you can truly realize that the only opinion that matters is your own, life can get pretty clear. And the noises inside your head get pretty quiet.
My life was
As kids, we believed a lot of different things. From thinking that the gifts under the Christmas tree were kept there by Santa, to imagining a tiny fairy that came in at the dead of night to steal the loose tooth from underneath our pillows. Most of the things we believed in as kids are magical. Information pieced together by stories that we've been told by adults, or things that we watched on TV. One of those things that some of us watched on TV and actually believed in was Barney. That's right, the purple dinosaur. Barney's theme song, while nonsensical, offers us a rather interesting paradox. The song goes, Barney is a dinosaur from our imagination. Barney shows us lots of things like how to play pretend. Which begs the question, if Barney was the one who taught us how to play pretend, then how did we imagine him to be in the first place? It's the classic causal loop, where an event in the future creates an event in the past, which creates the event in the future, and so you're left without a point of origin. Paradoxes are all around us, from the shows we grew up watching as kids, to the songs that were stuck in our heads throughout middle school. You know that one song by One Direction that goes, "You don't know that you're beautiful, that's what makes you beautiful." Just think about it for a moment. For her to not know that she was beautiful, she had to have been beautiful in the first place, which means that she couldn't have known what made her beautiful. As if that wasn't enough, the song is all about telling the girl that she is beautiful. So does that mean then that when the song is over, the girl stops being beautiful? Because now that she knows that she is beautiful, shouldn't that make her no longer beautiful? But if she stops believing she's beautiful, doesn't that then make her beautiful again? It's a weird thing in that the more you think about it, the less sense it makes. Relationships are also weird. Two random people meet each other and decide that they want to spend all, or at least most of their time together. You're asking each other silly paradoxical questions like, if a person who can read minds and a person who can predict the future fight each other, who would win? Soon after, you're both in bed on a cold, windy night, sharing secrets you said you'd never tell anyone. You're lying down there with your partner in a windowless room, and then it begins to rain. You don't have any idea of what the weather outside is like. You have no weather app or anything like that. And so when your friend walks in and tells you it's raining outside, you don't believe them. In that scenario, your friend can say about you, "It's raining," but John doesn't believe it. And it would be perfectly acceptable. So why is it that if you say the same thing, "It's raining, but I don't believe it is," everyone in the room might think you've just lost your mind? Why is the second question absurd and not the first? Why is it absurd for us to say something that is true about ourselves? Speaking of truth, what do you think would happen to Pinocchio if he said the words, "My nose will grow now"? If Pinocchio's nose grows, then that means he was telling you the truth, so his nose shouldn't have grown. But if his nose doesn't grow, then he just told a lie, and so his nose should grow. Some people don't consider this to be a paradox. The argument is that Pinocchio's nose would not grow because he didn't lie. He simply made a false prediction. But hey, where's the fun in that?
Hello.
A lot of the times we say things that make sense to us on the surface.
There's no
However,
time to rest.
on closer inspection, you quickly realize things are not as they seem. Let's say you go out and buy a lottery ticket knowing fully well that your chances of winning are 10 million to 1. It would be perfectly normal for you to conclude that you did not get the winning ticket. In fact, it would be considered a bit crazy for you to think that your ticket won. You'll also be justified in thinking that your friend, your uncle, your sister, his sister, their cousin, and their dog all have losing tickets. You look around you in the store, you're justified in believing that everyone you encounter will probably lose, and in turn that no ticket will win. However, knowing fully well that the lottery was fair and there must be one winner, you are justified in believing something you know to be false. Just how? This only goes to show that truth is relative. It depends on context, on knowledge, and perspective about the world. Because the truth is the only thing that you can prove with certainty is that nothing is certain. I watched a couple fighting outside Starbucks the other day. The woman turned to the man who was with her and in a slightly raised voice she said, "Deep down, you're really shallow." And while the rest of the coffee shop pretended that they didn't just hear that, I had to pause and think about it for a moment. If he had it deep down, then how can he be shallow? But I bet that's not what was in his mind. Or was it? For all we know, he was probably thinking of shallower thoughts, deep down in his heart. For a relationship to succeed, everyone in the relationship needs to trust one another. But this is real life, and sometimes people are insecure, and sometimes it's not their fault. Everything from anxiety to past traumatic experiences, the reality of the world forces us sometimes to be insecure. This is why people often find it easier to talk to strangers about their deepest, darkest secrets than the ones they claim to trust. It's the paradox of trust. We claim to trust this person, yet we fear they would judge us for our secrets. And on the flip side, we feel most comfortable telling people who we do not trust the secrets that could damn us. Not long before the couple finished their argument, the baristas in the coffee shop walked out to the little girl and her mom in the chair adjacent to me. They handed the little girl a tiny birthday cupcake and sang the happy birthday song to her. As she closed her eyes to make a wish before blowing out the candles, I quickly glanced around the room and I thought to myself, what are the chances that someone else in here right now also has their birthday today. And like most rational people, I concluded that it was far too unlikely. There were less than 30 people in the coffee shop that day, and there are 365 days in a year. So of course the chances that 2 random people would have the same birthday would be slim, right? Well, most people would say yes, but according to the birthday paradox, most people would be wrong. Because if there are 23 people in a room, there's a 50% chance that 2 of them share a birthday. Now to fully understand this one, we're going to need some math, so permit me to do a little bit of probability analysis. Let's start small, with just 2 people. Let's ignore leap years, or twins, or any patterns that suggest babies are born more times at certain periods of the year than others, because those are just too confusing. Okay, say you and I are in a room together. There's a 365 out of 365, or 100% chance, that I have a birthday. I do. And a 365 out of 365 times 364 out of 365 chance that we both do not share the same birthday. Now, let's say one other person in the room joins us. The probability that this new person does not have the same birthday as either of us becomes 365 over 365 times 364 over 365 times 363 over 365, and that multiplication just goes on and on and on for however many babies you want. When you get to the 23rd baby, this incredibly long series of multiplication gives you the number 0.492, which is basically 49.2%. Now, this is the probability that we do not share a birthday. To find out the probability that 2 random people in this coffee shop do share a birthday, we have to subtract that number from 100%, which gives us 50.7%. If you don't fully understand the math, honestly, I barely did too. But it checks out, trust me. While we're on the subject of math,